button that says live on YouTube.
Mhm.
And so since you're the host, you're able to see view stream, copy streaming link, and end stream.
Mhm.
So if any of your students want to share this link with their parents or whatever, they can share that link there instead of having them join the Zoom.
Awesome.
And then just before you end the meeting today, just click that live on YouTube button and then end stream.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, so we're live now and you can click that link to see the location of that.
Awesome.
I don't know if Jesse, if you want to tweet it, have a lot of people come to that. I don't know.
We're on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube.
All right.
Great.
Make that for a couple minutes.
Sounds good. I'll stop in later, but you should be good.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna yeah. Okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, then you can give them. Yeah, perfect. Handouts.
Is the phone?
She's not here yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to hold on to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Hand it over. Lily, I guess went to the restroom or something, but I think we can start. Yeah, we can start without him. So we are on live on YouTube as well. So if friends and family, you can figure out how to send it to y'all. But welcome to Tulane University Sustainable Real Estate Development 380 Design Development 2. We are responding to an RFP to redevelop the last 2 blocks of the Ferret neighborhood. And the first group that's going to present here is Brett Oasis. I will let everyone introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Elliot Aliff. I'm a real estate major and the project manager for Oasis project.
Hi, I'm Amelia Keith. I was the market analyst for this project. I'm a real estate psychology major.
Hi, I'm Maddie Wells. I was the head architect for this project, and I am a architecture and real estate major.
My name is Harry Singer. I'm a real estate major and I will be the COO.
And I'm Eric Greenberg. I'm a finance and real estate major, and I'm the CEO of Fred Oasis.
All right, so we are Blue Crescent Development, and our development project is Fred Oasis. And so our mission statement stated here is we are a for-profit firm specializing in creating an open neighborly environment for our clientele. Our goal is to create safe environments for families, bring in jobs for locals, and build long-lasting spaces for communities to enjoy. So now going through our properties, our first property set at 4528 Fred Street will act as a daycare center and an office space. And we think that this will provide a good communal aspect for office workers, for business professionals to be able to incorporate a daycare center for their children as well. So now moving on to our 2400 Napoleon Avenue development, we plan to transform this into an event space, and we believe that this will attract people of all ages. Now moving on to 4423 LaSalle Street, we plan to turn this into a hostel, which will provide housing for lower income people and bring in tourists as well. And now finally, 2437 Jenna Street, we plan to turn this into a YMCA, which we believe will help bring an active aspect to the New Orleans community. So now moving on to Amelia for the market analysis.
So as you can see, we have 4 different buildings that we have targeted for redevelopment on 3 different sites. So because there's so many buildings and it's such a large scale project, we plan on approaching this project in 2 phases. So for phase 1 of the Grove Street property, and we wanted to maintain as much of the mixed use feel that the property currently had. It currently was a bar on the bottom, office space on top. And we really like the use of office space as programming for the top floor, so we will be maintaining that. But when doing our market research, we found that there are only 5 extended hour daycares in all of New Orleans. And because this property is located in such a unique position where there's so much commercial activity, there's so many workers coming in, and you're also right near the Ocean Hospital, there's a great need for extended hour daycares for workers with young children. So we think that a daycare would be a very profitable tenant and will fill a gap in New Orleans. Then once that property becomes profitable, we will acquire our phase 2 properties. So for our church property, it's a very unique building, and we wanted to maintain as much of the historic and religious feel of the building as possible because it is a beautiful space. So we thought we would capitalize on the current trend of redeveloping churches into event spaces and restaurants that you can see in other places throughout New Orleans. So we think that this would be a great event space, and that the attached rectory that we'll be redeveloping into a hostel will be a very cohesive property as a whole. So moving on to the hostel, it will be attached to the event space, which could work well for people that are coming in for events there, but also could work well for people that just want a separate place to stay. So when we were looking at the demographics of people visiting New Orleans, the average visitor is between 40 and 50, which I found a little surprising because New Orleans seems to be very much targeted toward. So it seems as if young people are priced out of visiting New Orleans at the expense of downtown hotels. So we think that a hostel will bring in a different demographic that might not be able to visit New Orleans otherwise. And it also will bring a significant new revenue stream to the local economy. We were looking at different comps at hotels in other cities, and one that really stuck with me is the HI Hostel Group in Boston. While their hostel is a little bit bigger, it was able to bring $12.5 million into the economy just in the first year alone. So if that's any indication of what a hostel can do for a local economy, we think that it would be a great idea to improve the economy. So finally, for our Jenna Street property, this property was formerly a Catholic school. It has a very unique layout and is a very large space. So we thought that it would be a great YMCA. YMCAs bring in a lot of different community amenities and fill gaps in community needs such as emergency daycare or athletic programming for children with disabilities, while also having an economic benefit. One of our market studies was at YMCA in Springfield, Illinois, which brought $300,000 into the community, which is pretty surprising because I didn't know YMCAs had any sort of financial impact on their communities as well.
Okay, so now we'll be talking about our project timeline. So to begin off, our acquisition period is going to began in March of 2021 and will be completed by December of 2021. So we're going to leverage historic and new market tax credits, which will take all of 2 months in order to have board approval and be able to use those. And with public meetings, we're going to have a 9-month period in which we're going to talk with the neighborhood and make sure they adhere and we understand their needs. And going forward with that, we're going to make sure they understand the construction timeframes, start and stop dates, to make sure there are no noise complaints. and they could make their living as easy as possible while we're developing the 4 different sites here. Simultaneously with fundraising, due diligence, and closing, so just getting all the final documents and our equity to be able to fund the project, it will also be taking 9 months. Moving on to development phase 1. So our bank loan, which we will be receiving 70% LTV, be taking 2 months here from October to November of 2022. And our architect and engineer plan approvals will be simultaneously moving, and that will be 3 months. Okay, so with construction and development, we're gonna have a 12-month period here before the first site will be completed, and that is going to be, as you can see, 4528 Ferret Street. Moving on to development phase 2, we're going to have a very similar plan here with our bank loan and architect and engineer plan approvals, with our construction development timeline being just over 24 months for phase 2. Our challenge recovery with the tornado is a 3-month period here between September of 2024 and December of 2024. And this will be damaging the YMCA, which with our financial package, we have over $2 million accounted for structural damage and redevelopment for the property. Moving on to our environmental stuff.
Yeah, so getting into some of the neighborhood analysis for specifically the red neighborhood. Looking here, you can see that it's predominantly residential neighborhood, with the objection of Red Street itself being predominantly commercial, close proximity to a lot of schools, and of course, close proximity to Oshman healthcare. And also looking at different demographics, the neighborhood is predominantly Black. The neighborhood is predominantly low to mid income, and also there is a affordability problem as far as renters and owners within the area. Looking at zoning, it kind of aligns with what I've already said. The area, all in dark blue, you can kind of see it's predominantly residential with the exception of Oshman here, and commercial along Ferret and Claiborne. But looking at future land use and what is anticipated for the site, everything kind of remains the same, except an interesting fact is that all 4 of our properties are aligned with an arts district, which is permitted additional, it has additional permits for live entertainment, which I think will play into the large parking lot between the YMCA and what will be the event venue, but I'll get into that later. And then also looking at transit in the area, everyone knows Ferret is a typically busy street. It's supposed to be quote unquote bike friendly, however, many of us disagree with that statement. So our proposal is to kind of improve on this, both in 4 ways: car, public transit, biking, and walking. These diagrams kind of just show the changes in car and public transit. The main thing that we would like to propose is a relief street that kind of bisects the Ferret neighborhood located here. This would allow for car traffic to kind of flow and disperse and not overcrowd the street so much. We would also like to propose more public parking along the street, and one of these public parking spots would operate as a rideshare drop-off, so that way cars aren't stopping in the middle of the street and causing more traffic than needed. In regards to walking and biking, we would like to create more shade spots to encourage walking and biking up and down the street. Our main goal is to kind of give Ferret Street more of the appeal of Magazine, where people feel safe enough to like park a few blocks away and then freely walk up and down the street, and cars just kind of use it as a thoroughfare, rather than this congested street that, you know, you have a lot of stops, you have a lot of people, you're worrying about bikers. So kind of trying to integrate more of a slower pace to the street. Getting into some of the design and the environmental benefits that we have anticipated. As mentioned, we would like to increase walking and biking in the area, and our way of doing that would be to increase tree canopy. So as you can see in some of these renderings, trying to increase the amount of shade that is available along sidewalks and the amount of bike racks that are available, so where people feel comfortable walking and biking along the street. And additionally, something else that we've been thinking about is the use of the large parking lot that divides the YMCA and what will be the event venue. So this parking lot, we were thinking could either hold underneath it, potentially some water management or water storage. If we were to change it to pervious pavement, we think that it would be a great opportunity since it is such a large parking lot and it does have a lot of space without changing it from its traditional use of a parking lot because parking is very much needed within the area. I would also like to mention that we see the parking lot as an opportunity for outdoor event space for both the YMCA and the event venue, so both public and private events, as you can see here. So we think a lot of the existing conditions can be amplified by just tweaking the use a little bit.
Yeah, so now we'll lead into the pro forma. So similarly to our construction process, we split the pro forma into a phase 1 and phase 2 situation where phase 1 is 452 in Bread Street, and phase 2 is our other 3 properties. So just looking at the rent roll for phase 1, so we have 18,000 square feet of space. We have 10,000 on the bottom floor for the daycare. We have about 8,000 on the top floor for commercial, and we're on the top floor. We think we have adequate space for 3 separate office spaces. We use, like looking at nearby properties and market comps, we're estimating about a $20 to $30 per square foot rent. And now looking at phase 2, obviously we have 3 properties, so much more space, much more revenue coming in. We have about 20,000 square feet of space coming in from the community space, which is the church, and the hostel. And the YMCA obviously was the old school, so it's a much larger space. And YMCA's are just bigger in general, so you have nearly 50,000 square feet of space there. And for both of these properties, we also use $20 to $30 per square foot for our rent roll. And with that, we're projected to bring in nearly $1.5 million in revenue, which is really good. Now looking at our sources and uses. So for phase 1, our first mortgage, we're using a 70% loan to value mortgage, where our annual payment will be about $228,000 per year. We are applying for historic tax credits, local and federal, which will make up about 20% of our total sources. And we are also going to be eligible for new market tax credits because for phase 1 and phase 2, because all of our properties are bringing in lots of jobs for the economy, like hundreds of jobs. So we're pretty confident we'll be able to get that. And then that remains about 5% left of our sources for equity funding. And looking at phase 2, and just like comparing these 2 different pie charts, our sources are pretty evenly distributed, although like this is a much larger project. We have about $30 million in sources uses here, a $50 million loan. Our percentages are pretty much the same. We have about 50% of our funding from our first loan, and then 20% from our historic tax credits, a third from our new market tax credit, and then about 5% left. And now just looking at our net operating income. So we use a 2% vacancy rate and about 3% escalation rate for our operating expenses. And so with that, for phase 1, our net operating income is about $280,000, and that's going to steadily increase over the next 10 years, eventually to about $300,000. And for phase 2, since we're offsetting that 2 years, we'll start getting some income in year 3. And we'll see about $1 million in net operating income. And by year 10, nearly $1.2 million in income. And also subtracting our annual debt payment. For both phase 1 and phase 2, we're going to see debt service coverage ratios of over 1.2 in the first year, and that's going to get much higher as the years go on, which is great because we'll have enough cash left over to pay our loans.
I think that's it. We'd like to open the floor to any questions.
Sorry, before any questions, I need to introduce everybody. We'll be the market. So our review panel. So on the left-hand side, we've got Louis Schneider. He is from NHS and is here for Amy Matisse today. You manage all the construction, NHS, and real estate development. So he's been with NHS for about 30 years and actively working in the front neighborhood. And then next we have Brown Marks. He is the world's best volunteer. He is the vice chair for NHS and then leads the chair for Providence Community Housing. So most of his volunteer roles oversee 4520 Barrett and the former school at Jetta and correct. And then on Zoom, we have Rashida. Hi. Can you hear everything okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Perfect. I also emailed you the boards.
Thank you.
And you teach here at the School of Architecture. Correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you just said?
You teach here in the School of Architecture.
Yes, I teach the identity and agency course with Laura Blocker, and I'm also the assistant director of the Small Center.
Awesome. And then we have Professor Keenan watching as well. And then we have Professor Huppy, who is the director of the real estate undergraduate program here. And then Professor Keeler, who oversees the undergrad and master's program. All right. Now you go.
Can you guys speak to the potential synergies between Ochsner Baptist and Tulane University? I didn't quite make those connections, if there was any obvious ones. Would there be anything other than just, oh, they might be potential users of the space, like the daycare or the YMCA, for instance? Is there anything structurally that you would plan to have set up between those entities?
I'm very confused by the question.
So would you plan to have anything structurally signed between Tulane and Ochsner Baptist to potentially officially have users of the space or potentially have them partake in the share of the revenue generation?
I don't know if Ochsner was like potential tenant for like working with us. I think that was more like to explain like the importance of the daycare, that there's people working at Ochsner, so they might want like if they have children, like a daycare would be very useful just for employees there.
So does Ochsner have their own system for providing daycare for their employees, or is that part of your market analysis that they don't?
That was one. I think that's a great question, because you could bring Ochsner in and they promote what you're doing.
We don't really have any like partners with any
Yeah,
businesses really.
that wasn't something we considered, but those are great ideas.
And why did you guys shy away from housing?
We noticed that the sort of commercial trend that Barrett has been on has proven to be very successful. And also just looking at the buildings themselves, some of them are somewhat difficult to develop, so we wanted to develop them to best use.
Also, like our company, like as in our mission statement, we're really just about bringing communities together. So residential isn't really something that we've been doing. That's progressive development.
And then my last question, can you guys clarify? So this is all rehab work that you're planning?
Essentially,
You did not plan to do any demolition or new construction. And so essentially you're proposing to keep the same density pattern.
yes.
Why did you guys choose to do that versus doing an up density type project to bring in more square footage to Fresh Street?
Well, I think part of it has to do with like being eligible for historic tax credits. So there's like certain things in buildings that obviously you can't touch. Also, it's less expensive to just completely reconstruct the building. And a lot of our buildings are just like have importance in the community that we want to keep. The only reconstruction that like we're planning on is like our like problem that our challenge that we're tasked with, which is the tornado. essentially like the tornado has like partially destroyed like the YMCA during construction. So the only like new construction we have planned is that.
Another factor we were thinking about was parking, because Corette's already a really dense area, and I don't know how much more density it could handle while still being successful.
So does that mean that you're providing parking somewhere in these properties? Can you clarify that?
Well, 453 Front Street already has parking to the left of it. So, and like we do have the option of like building over it, like what's actually happening there right now. But that parking lot is going to stay intact. And then when we went to visit the church and the school in person, we were told that the most important piece of the land was the parking. So we definitely want to keep that.
And is that parking, is that to code, to zoning, or is that under or over, or where do you stand with the parking spaces?
In terms of zoning.
Yeah, so obviously your uses, your proposed uses are gonna demand that there be a certain amount of parking, okay? And that might not be a question if this is historic district too. So can you guys just state, like, with your proposed uses, what are you supposed to deliver in terms of parking?
Well, we are in a historic mixed use district, so we are like able to have a lot of parking, but we're planning on, since we're not like building anything new, we're just reconstructing. There's already parking lot there, so we're planning on using the same amount of space that we have parking there as our parking lot. As you can kind of see in the picture, like there's just like a large like area for parking between the two buildings that can be shared. And also, obviously, parking is extremely necessary because a lot of people coming into YMCA, a lot of people, you know, coming into event space when there is an event.
I guess maybe John's asking, does the change in use change the parking requirements, and do you meet them or exceed them?
I will say I did not make him go on. I made them look at the zoning, but I didn't make them actually count on the parking is there. So-
Basically, saw if they're like eligible to have parking, right? We basically just had to know our like zoning is eligible for parking.
Yeah, if there was eligible, if there's any, based on your uses, you have to take. It's kind of the general.
I mean, my other concern with that is also just hours of use. Like, can you guys explain kind of in these different phases, or maybe just project by project, like when are your users going to be at these properties? Are they all there at the same time? Are you going to have 1,000 people coming down on Perez Street, all to drop off their kids and do everything? Or is this kind of spread out throughout the day or weekend, weekdays? Can you explain that?
So what worked out well in terms of parking is that the daycare facility will be mostly drop off, so a lot of the actual parking spaces will be available for people working at the office. And then the event space and the YMCA. The event space will most likely be more nighttime events, and the YMCA will be more daytime use, so we're hoping that will work out with parking, so that, you know, there's always out of parking.
You're asking some tough questions, and believe me, parking on the left is
Yeah.
out of control.
Yeah.
There's no parking.
Yeah.
If you want to park on the restaurant, you got to go to work at 6 o'clock. So the traffic is, I've been there before Katrina and I'm here now. Before Katrina, you could basically do what you wanted on Front Street, because it was not a path. It was a path nobody wanted to go down, like that. Now it's totally different. The traffic is incredible. There's no parking. If you have big events, I don't know where you're going to park. I'll tell you that. Because I don't know how much parking you got, but you don't have enough for a big event. And the lot across the street on Cadiz, on the corner of Cadiz, it's correct. That thing's filled up all the time. And those businesses on Barrett, like dentists, and people park there at the zoos because they can walk, that way they can walk the way to zoos. So you really have to think about parking. It's just bad. Brown can tell you the same thing I'm going to say, that we've been trying to develop 45, 28 for 2.5 years now. The parking is everything that anybody ever talks about. It's how you are going to control the parking when you develop 45, 28, and you develop the parking lot that we rightfully own, and we should be able to got to do what we want, but you can't. So, and the requirement is just that's what you gotta be careful. So the parking is big, big, big on whatever y'all gonna do. I love the idea of Lions, yeah, I think that's great. But if you're gonna have events in there, or events in the event center, you're gonna have, it's just gonna be packed with parking. Daycare, I know that's people dropping off, when people are picking up, it's a whole different story. You got to park, you gotta get out, get caught, get there. I can see my two sons with their children, how they have to park, wherever they go, get out the car, go in, get the children, and then come back up. Drop off at home, it's basically the same thing, especially with COVID, they don't let anybody in. I mean, and that's probably gonna go away, but it's an issue right now. And you don't know when it's gonna ever really say, okay, we can drop them off, but come in. Most of the time, daycare, you gotta go in there. When the kid goes in, they have his or her name there. And as a parent or guardian, you gotta sign your name that you drop them. It's not like you just open the door and get out of the front.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's not like going to high school. Get out and go inside. It's very different. So there's a lot of things you'll have to think about. There's gonna be a lot of traffic involved in all of that. And I can only imagine the complaints coming out of the daycare center, the traffic flying up on French Street, 3 blocks long. I can only see that coming. Real consideration that you'll have to take. Keep thought about.
As you mentioned, the community meetings in the schedule going forward, have you talked to the community to get this far?
We have talked to the community yet this far. Just we want them to understand like what we're bringing to the community here and what we're trying to do to make their lives easier while the amount of construction that we're working on is going on. So particularly what I want to emphasize is that between the hours of 9 and 5 p.m. and sometimes earlier, construction will be taking place. So we don't want that to be a disturbance to the residential houses and people living in the neighborhood.
So you're gonna start construction now?
Yeah.
It's, what else did you learn from the community?
I think the majority of the issues stemmed from the amount of noise that's going on and how these structures will benefit their community. We want to kind of keep this area close knit and together and being able to use all of these recreational spaces like the YMCA, the hostel and event space alongside Fred Street, which are all within walking distance of one another. So it all be together.
So were any of these things that the community expressed, if there whoever you spoke with, expressed the need for a place to go exercise or have their friends stay in the hospital?
Yeah, particularly the YMCA and like I said, the hostel, just for someone to stay, like visitors, and another usage for working out in the area that isn't just like the crowd center.
Yeah, there's not many gyms or fitness
Or
centers
look,
in that area as well.
necessarily large gyms. Yeah.
Also, when we toured these properties and we were talking to the people who would be selling them and were hearing actual plans to what would be happening to these properties, they were fairly similar to what we did there.
Also, as far as like the noise thing you mentioned earlier, this is partially why we're doing a phase 1 and a phase 2. Because like, as you can see on our project map, like these 3 buildings are all in the same block. There's no houses right here. I mean, obviously houses in the surrounding area like, will be annoyed by it. But like, that's kind of why we're designated this all in one area and then we're doing that separately too, just because of like location.
Also, we have to account for streets being closed off all throughout here, which can mess up traffic a little, especially for businesses that are trying to operate. They need to be able to have foot traffic and road traffic as well.
I have some concerns about the tenant side of this. I can envision a tenant for the daycare. There's lots of daycares. They might want a second location for location kind of stuff. YMCA, obvious, it's a national brand. My biggest concern is the event space and the hostel. Who are going to run those? Because when I think hostel, I don't just immediately envision, oh yeah, there's this brand out there that does hostels. You can go get a phone call and have that, LOI for a lease signed this afternoon. Like, who's going to run this? Are you guys going to run these venues, or like, what is your plan to get the operations side of that figured out?
There actually is a hostel chain that when we were doing research, I found, and that's the hostel chain that runs the Boston hostel I was talking about. It's called HI Group. And they have a great mission statement that matches up with ours one. So I think they could be a good potential tenant to attract. But we haven't specified one particular tenant that we're looking for.
As far as like the community space goes, and the event space, it's slightly confusing, but like we're not, like we don't plan on operating the space, like we plan on leasing that to someone to then fill others to their music. Yeah.
They're a private business.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
So you
all.
don't have a plan for the event space yet.
We don't
So you're
have-
relying on a mom and pop startup potentially. So there's some risk there.
Yeah.
There is a big risk that you can't find the operator.
Especially where like the vacancy rate comes into play and everything too.
Gina, I have a question for you. This probably relates to the setup for this project. On the acquisition side, are we all supposed to assume that this is just a flat cost that they're buying into, or did they have to arrive at the bid price for this RFP?
They had to arrive at the bid price, however, most of these buildings have had recent appraisals for sale right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I looked at
So
the-
can you
Yeah.
clarify, like, how did you arrive? Why would your project win? Why would you make us happy if we're the RFP deciders versus these other developers more?
Well, essentially, like, we're all about like bringing the community together, and that's exactly what we're doing with this. Like, we're having a place for children to be, we're having a place for families to be at the YMCA. We're bringing people together with our event space. Ultimately, like, we're like adding things to this neighborhood that aren't there right now, that will bring this community together, while also generating a lot of revenue. So, yeah, we're pretty confident in the ability of the tenants.
And who should we represent? Are we-
So we are representing the Tulane group that is like a quasi city agency, I think.
Okay.
That has somewhat control the area.
So you guys are proposing a lump sum upfront payment, right? Is that what you're
Essentially, but again, like, we don't need it all, like, right away, because that's why we're doing a phase 1 and phase 2. So like, we'll need some originally for phase 1, and then obviously more for phase 2. However, we'll be generating income from phase 1 in the first 2 years while this is being constructed. So
Okay, so no long-term share revenues or leases to the city or anything like that. It's all just a lump sum payment.
like, like as far as like acquisition goes, or, yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I would just say my only concern with that is, you're potentially making the city have to provide a lot more services to this neighborhood. Like a lot of these infrastructure costs, someone's gonna have to pay for that.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of it's probably gonna get punted right back to the city to have to address that, and that's gonna be a big concern. So you may want to consider restructuring this to potentially offset some of that over time and be tied to the city revenue-wise a little bit longer term
Yeah.
than just an upfront payment.
I'm guessing I was gonna ask about the public infrastructure, you mentioned the kind of bikeways and different public transit and even this whole road that is gonna be designated in some other way. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. Those are all good ideas, but they're easy to say that somebody else should do all of them. And it's unclear what the connection or what the hook might be, how this project might help those things actually happen, rather than rely on somebody else doing it.
Because if you guys said, oh, we're gonna pay for it, and it's a line item in your budget and say, these are all the improvements that we're gonna do, City of New Orleans doesn't have to pay for it, then that's a big carrot to want to lean towards your project. Because you guys are not just bringing commercial usage, but you're also providing infrastructure too, that otherwise we don't have unlimited funds
Yeah.
to go do all this stuff. We commonly look for developers to help take a share of that load.
I think as far as like biking paths and whatnot, I think that's more of like an after thing. I think our main focus is like getting these buildings up and running, and then afterwards, like once like, everything is constructed, then we'll have the time and the energy, the money, the space to actually do all that.
As a member of a community, in my experience, once the developers have gotten their feet, their time and energy goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
Not on the streetscape. So I think that John was saying something that's more strong, and I think that would fit in with your kind of mission is we're bringing the community together. And I guess if I have kids and I can afford the daycare, that's a community use, but it's not really a community use. I mean, maybe I'm gonna go to the event space, but more likely people are gonna come into our neighborhood for events. And I'm not gonna walk 4 blocks to the event space. So, I think the story of the central story of we're bringing community together, I feel like there's an opportunity to make that more kind of meaningful and different than we're also just developing kind of more property.
Yeah.
Now, like somebody mentioned earlier, there's no housing in this at all, which I think you have to do something like that because you need to be able to get people that used to live around Red Street, who got priced out of Red Street, that want to come back to Red Street. We need to have something that they can get into. This could be an ideal thing for one of these buildings, but I'm just saying that that's part of overall problem with what they were doing. People that are in there, their property taxes are skyrocketing. They're not going to be able to afford it pretty soon. And that's the worst thing in anybody's life is that the house is paid for, but now they can't afford the property tax. So what do? They're going to come take your property. So we got to think about all that kind of stuff. That's why I thought some housing would be, I think you mentioned housing. I think there should be something, but we'll see the rest.
Is there a design element to this that helps to make it unique or successful?
As far as the design, because we are applying for historic tax credits, we best to maintain the integrity of the building as far as the outside. For the interior of the event space, for the church particularly, it's very deep space. Very, I don't even know how to put it into words, but walking in is very captivating. As far as something that makes it different, I would say the biggest thing is something that you guys are pointing out is like contributing to existing infrastructure would probably be the main thing, like going outside of the building, adding additional things. Since you can't really touch the structure. However, we didn't explore that as much as we probably should have, as you mentioned, but I think that's something that's very different that allows developers to really get. But yeah, I would say probably the infrastructure aspects of it, or adding more infrastructure to the outside of the building to bring people in, be what makes it a little bit different.
I think someone did mention it. Someone said something about landscaping and tree coverage. And I thought that needs to be a lot stronger in your narrative. Like I was just saying, something to tie this together so that you're bringing some cohesion to these 4 very different projects. I think lighting, landscaping, different modes of transportation. Okay, and it's not just cars, but also bikes. Now scooters, stuff like that. And really being a little more explicit about what that is exactly. That's why I was so curious about your potential synergies with, I don't want to give any cookies to the rest of the group, but like, how do you get Tulane students, a huge mega population of undergraduates who are graduates who are ready to come, be customers on this thoroughfare? How do you get them from campus a mile away to this location? Are you expecting them to get in their car and drive or walk a mile? Like, how else can they do that? How are you going to make it easier for that population to get over here?
There's actually a shuttle that takes Tulane students down to that street currently, so that's something they could continue to utilize. And I know that at least for me and my friends will walk to Forever.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
It's pretty walkable for younger, So I don't know if accessibility will be as much of an issue for students just because there's so many resources.
But can it be done better?
Yeah.
And how? How would you guys make it better?
Something that we mentioned, you probably know more, is creating the available lots that are empty, probably turning those into one of additional public parking, but also to ride truck drop off. So again, Ubers and Lyfts aren't stopping in the middle of the street. People feel as if, okay, I can take the Uber, get dropped off right on Correct, and walk wherever I need to walk. And that's particularly for me, I Uber a lot. especially at night.
I mean, I think the main thing that would be attracting to students would be the YMCA. And, you know, we have like the Raleigh Center, obviously, but I think people that are traveling off campus to go to this type of thing, a lot of time have cars, but also, like as Amelia said, like, I know, like, at least most people I know walk like all the way down First Street all the time. I mean, I know that we have a good walk score of I think 72, we have a bike score of 83, so it's generally pretty close and like walkable and bikeable to get to where you need to go.
Any last comments?
Comprehensive, I like it.
Thank you.
Any last comments from the class? Hard going first. All right, well, thanks for all of that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We have more things.
Yeah, they're all.
So hello, Tulane Group and the people of New Orleans. My name is Cesar Yano. I'm a market analyst for Core Orleans.
I'm Jessica Bundy, and I'm the architect on the project.
I'm Ed Roman. I'm the financial manager.
I'm Amelia Schofield, and I'm the designer.
So a little bit of our history. Our founders went to Tulane here about 15 years ago, and they decided after graduation they wanted to give back to New Orleans and stay in New Orleans. They had a very strong entrepreneurial, aspect of them, and they wanted to just keep on giving back. So they decided to find this organization, and it began as just a residential, just rehab and flipping these units. And later on, it had transformed into, some commercial rehab. And later on, which we are today, it's about 15 people in our organization, and it is now mostly about master development. So our mission is to create value. And it's just not about creating value for our investors. It's more importantly creating value for the community and everyone that's involved. So I had done a little study, asking people what New Orleans is to them. And here are a few words that they had said. They had said proud, community-driven, growing, a strong culture, resilient. I think resilience is probably the most important one. We've seen the resiliency in post-Hurricane Katrina. We've seen the growth. We've seen the resiliency in the financial crisis of 2008. And now we see the resiliency of COVID-19. And, the people really they spoke about having that historical context in the community and how the city has grown so much since these crises. And that's probably what our value is. Our value is, to keep the historical context of the property, as well as having some sort of growth and having some focal points of the community in the Forêt corridor. We think that Forêt could be an amazing place that everyone will come and gather and celebrate. So our strategy in order to do that is to, take it one step at a time in a sense. And we believe that we have to be goal oriented. But we know that's going to be, a very lengthy process. And as long as we're efficient with our work, the general outcome is going to be fantastic. So with that, I'm just going to pass it on to Amelia.
Yes, so I just wanted to first set the scene and show that we're not just only focused on Brett as a team and as a group. We've really studied the community of New Orleans in different neighborhoods, and we want to be able to connect not only in our small block. We want to be able to extend outwards and bring in different people of the community, not only residents, but also tourists and students and people working. So first we wanted to show the existing site condition of the Fret area and the different uses here, which are residential, institutional, commercial, and they're a little bit, I would say, not unorganized, but one of our goals is to simplify the area and kind of point out the different spaces of where we can focus on residents and commercial and mixed use and how to bring them together in a more like cohesive way. And another aspect we want to point out is the zoning map, and we definitely want to acknowledge the zoning, and it's definitely something that we're going to maintain throughout our development. Is maintain like the zoning map, and then also public transportation and transit maps. We focused a lot on those because throughout our project and market analysis, we've noticed that parking is a very big issue in this area specifically, and also we want to be able to make it more bikeable and walkable. So the addition of bike lanes and more parking are definitely two key points that we want to keep in mind throughout our development. And here is another transit idea that I designed. We've seen a lot of people using Lyfts and Ubers, not only tourists, but also residents. And it does cause a lot of traffic backup. So we made specific drop-off points and pickup points and some existing parking lots and some of our new parking lots that will hopefully ease some of those traffic issues. Another aspect that we want to highlight is the proposed green landscape that we want to help enhance the community and definitely add, coverage and more greenery to hopefully, beautify and enhance the area. And then just going back to the existing site condition and the proposed site condition, we definitely want to, appreciate and acknowledge the existing history and architecture that's currently in the area. We're not really trying to reconstruct much. We're just mostly trying to elevate and enhance and add things that will benefit, the current residents and businesses in the area and support them in their future.
Yeah, like Amelia just said, we wanted to simplify Front Street a little bit, and since we've all been on Front and know that parking, biking is just a mess down there, so something that we wanted to do was eliminate one side of street parking and turn it into a bike lane. Front and Napoleon is a really big intersection, and as you can see from our public transportation map, there is a lot of room to go throughout the whole city. Napoleon's a big street and Front is too. So another thing we wanted to do was enhance and highlight the bus stop that's currently on this corner. Since it is a little bit of a mess there, we just kind of wanted to make it a little bit more usable and be like, this is a great place, where could we go? Even for tourists to maybe show a map and be like, this is where you can go throughout the city, you can go downtown, you can go to mid-city. So kind of highlighting that. And then Napoleon currently has a bike lane, so we just wanted to add a bike lane on Correct just to help out the bikers in this area since it is currently a mess. And we are able to eliminate one lane of street parking since we have other parking conditions going on in the area. And just going back how Napoleon Correct is such a big intersection, we just wanted to show but there are so many ways to get around, not just parking, and also eliminate one of those parking will help with the walkability as well, since it is walkable to on campus and walkable around. We wanted to show that this is a walkable area and not just a traffic pass. And then going into our acquisition strategy, we decided to buy 12 buildings, just general things that go along with our vision and mission statement. We wanted to keep the space pretty much as the same as it was before and just enhancing things. We did not want to displace anyone. We wanted to keep gentrification in mind. We did not want to change this so much where the rents are going up. We wanted it to stay as close as the area as possible, but just make it better for the community. There are a few residential units that we decided to purchase. This one right here currently was a vacant lot, so you're just building a similar duplex property to what are similar to ones right here. So that would be new construction. And then the other residential units, there is an apartment building that we want to make into affordable housing, just to make sure that no one is getting displaced in the area and are affordable units for the residents. And this building, we noticed, was a little bit underutilized, so that is why we chose to take that one. And it is a 12-studio apartment building. Another one that we chose to pick is this residential unit here, and this will be a reconstruction as well, just to enhance what is currently there. Pretty much all of the properties we chose to will be reconstruction or refurbishes, not a lot of new construction, just to try to eliminate the construction in the area. Another example of a new construction would be this commercial building here, which was a vacant lot, and since Bearcat is doing so well in that area, we wanted to create something similar to there and add another one of these mixed-use buildings here. And then here we decided to add a parking garage, just to increase, it'll be 3 stories, just to help with the parking issues in the area. This will be the old school become a community center and office space. So on the first floor of the community center, which you can see here are some pictures. We wanted to add a sports court and a grow youth farm just to include the community and all of New Orleans in general. And then here in the old church will become an event space, which can be used for weddings, concerts, and rented out. And then the rectory will become a commercial office space, which is what they're developing as now. So we just wanted to keep that pretty much done. So we just wanted to enhance that. And then finally, we go 452A Red Street, which will become an apartment and retail space, which is what we worked on in our last project. So you're just continuing that as well. Here's the elevation of what Jenna Street is going to be. And like Amelia said, that's going to be your commercial corridor, since it does have the most amount of commercial or mixed-use buildings, which is this street looking this way. So you can see the addition of the parking garage and our 2 new constructions of mixed-use buildings, and then the school with the park, and then the rectory building. So this is kind of just an idea of what that street would look like and how parking and community all kind of comes together, and that's our example street.
And so, given all that, given the vision, the strategy, 2 biggest questions that arise are, how are we going to pay for the property, and how do we create that value both from a financial perspective and then the community perspective? So I wanted to draw our attention right here to the rent rolls. And so we have 3 parts, like we explained, the residential, the commercial, and the parking aspect. But the idea behind that is we need to have similar tenancy that's cohesive with the neighborhood. In residential, we have our affordable housing units as well as our market rate, and that's pro-formed in here. And for our commercial, we wanted to create similar tenancy to what's already there. So we have Blaze Pizza, we have Company Burger, you have Cure, you have places like that. You also have Rouses coming in. So popular, strong credit tenants that can kind of thrive in this neighborhood. And with parking, we've already talked about kind of the creation of how we can make that more accessible for everyone. How we're going to pay for it. So we come to our sources and use financing. We've created, or we built general and strategic partnerships with a lot of sources of equity. In that case, we kind of brought in a limited partner and a general partner that's going to take on some of that equity for us and kind of help us lever up that debt in order to create more of a return for everyone involved. Additionally, we have low-income housing tax credits as well as state and federal historic tax credits that qualify for certain aspects of the project. I know these 2 right here qualify for that, as well as the Napoleon Ave apartment complex. That's the low-income housing tax credit. And with that, in our uses, most of it will go towards acquisition of the property in different phases and for all 12 of the different parts that are going on here, as well as mostly our development budget, our hard costs. And then moving over towards our project timeline, basically we decided how we're going to pay for it and then how we're going to put this to action. So part of the project is that there's a challenge involved. And so in 2020, when we started rendering these ideas, we ran into COVID-19, like most companies, businesses, everything had to shut down. We kind of had to push things back. And with that, our senior lender dropped out. And so our timeline is really delayed by, so this has been a while in the works. We're finally getting it off the ground now that things are recovering. There's positive vaccine news. And with that, we're able to kind of move forward at this point. So we have our due diligence period, which will take place through spring and this summer. And then we expect to begin construction beginning in the year 2022 with product delivery by Q1 of 2024, with given some time for leasing and tenancy to kind of take shape, stabilization by the end of Q4 in 2024. And with that being said, we want to bring you to kind of this mock return analysis for our partners and basically against our debt, which I will get into in a second. But so with our investor balance per year, we stand to make kind of a leveling off of cash flow, which would include 800,000 in the first year, all the way up to about 1.2 million in the final year, with certain tranches going down for CapEx years. And we have to do additional maintenance to some of the properties, as well as whatever may arise in terms of contingency. And with that being said, we can kind of bring it over back to the return analysis where each of our partners are making double-digit return percentage-wise after that 10-year sale, which is the current plan at this time. And with that, we stand to make that each partner at each tranche and each level would create an outsized return in the market while also delivering the overall product that creates the community value. So I think we all believe that this could be a win-win for both the financial perspective and the community's perspective.
Yeah, just to wrap things up, you as the Tulane group asked for 5 different things from us. You asked for a mixed-use neighborhood. I think we're providing that with our residential units, with our commercial, and just even some of our mixed use on Jenner Street of having some sort of retail on the bottom and offices on the top. Secondly, was you want us to have some sort of transit-oriented neighborhood. And I think we're providing that as well with our Uber and Lyft stations, with our bike lanes, the emphasis of the bus stop. Just the walkability of the area with having greenery, so you're not going to be scorching hot, which it is in New Orleans all the time when we're walking throughout Ferret. We also asked for a positive economic impact. I think that we're going to be bringing in a lot of jobs, hundreds of jobs, as well as an increase in taxes for the city. We also are going to enhance the sustainability and the resilience of the community. I think that, again, it's part of New Orleans' culture, and part of its DNA is to be resilient and sustainable in a sense. And I think with like a little bit of enhancement in the community, these buildings will last for a long time. They could be a focal point of the area. And lastly is addressing the issues of equity and affordability. We are adding 12 units for those people for affordable housing, as well as we're going to have a lot of market rate for your commercial uses and the residential uses that are not going to be affordable housing, but still affordable at a market rate. So with that, I think we could conclude, and if there's any questions.
I've got a question. I think we've addressed a lot of issues that are important to this project. We get back to the parking, that's the key issue. We're going to eliminate parking on one side of the street, is that correct? So the parking garage that we intend to create, is that just going to replace the parking that allows, or creating additional parking?
That is a 3-story parking garage, so it's going to bring more parking. In addition, we have the 45-28 parking, and then as well as this parking space that we're adding by the community center for the event space. The total amount of parking, it says, is 48 spaces. It will be either a monthly or hourly rate. So it is more spaces than we're currently there, even though we only needed the street parking.
So when you're gonna eliminate the parking, is it just gonna be in this little area or Red Street from before you get jumps?
I think we just wanted this area maybe a block or 2 down, just because parking is such a big issue, and if we only wanted, since we are making 48 new spaces, that isn't enough to go all the way down from us. would probably would just be our 2 blocks.
A couple blocks, yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2 more past that, but we don't want to eliminate all of them.
What's the cost to do something like that? I'm assuming you guys are paying for that.
Yes.
Across the building garage itself.
No, the
The
bike
bike
lane,
lane.
because that's city property, so.
We didn't factor in the exact cost for the bike lane itself by taking out those parking spots or that replacement cost. Because we were believing that that was the city. I also do know that if we were to do it, like for parking lot, it's about $50 to $75 a square foot. And I'm sure just, taking away those parking spots may be actually cheaper just because we're putting down the bike lanes and kind of sacrificing it. But to give you some sort of cost, it's about $50 to $75.
I couldn't imagine it being that much money because we're just probably painting a bike lane. We work with the city and try to show them that would be an enhancement to the area, not something that they would dislike.
Cesar, your summary at the end was really good. That was really helpful. I was actually like brewing up in my head. I almost wish you were a little more articulate towards the front about just what is your program? Don't be afraid to say, this is how many units we're going to deliver. We're going to build 120 units. I think that just provides a scale that's a little more digestible for us to understand. Because you went right into diving into talking about all the individual projects, but sometimes it's helpful to summarize the project as a whole. So number of units, number of jobs, both groups have kind of shied away from pinpointing. I know it's really hard to like summarize a jobs number, but stick to one, okay? Try to do your best to estimate that. There's obviously 2 types of jobs too, construction and also permanent jobs. And then I think the other big summary bit of this, which you didn't hit, which I have a couple questions, I know these guys are gonna have a lot of questions, which is, what is your definition of affordable? That was not clear to me. Okay, and I want to catch you on one little vocabulary. I'm gonna have you answer that in a second, like what is affordable, but you also said those people. Be really careful with your word choice, okay? Because those people are the people who make up this neighborhood and have been here a long time, okay? It's their neighborhood, all right? And we need to be very careful with that type of language. But what is affordable?
I believe affordable would just be 80% of the median of the area.
And how did you arrive at that? Is that some sort of benchmark that a financing source is requiring, or did you arrive at that based on your market analysis? Or?
So our market analysis was that that was about $1.77 was like the market rate. So we knew that whatever our threshold was going to be is not something way below that. So it'll probably be around $1.20 per square foot, $1 or $1.20 per square foot. So for it to be affordable to those people that need affordable housing.
Okay. And then just to clarify, so you guys are planning for a LIHTC project on one of these buildings? Which one is that again?
It's the 2508
Can you point to it?
This is right here, the 12.
The 12 units. So my concern is probably on the low side for a LIHTC project. Usually that's probably about the lowest number of units you'd ever see on a LIHTC project. So just curious, if that LIHTC tax credit fails, if you do not get the award, what could be a backup financial source to still be able to provide affordability?
So to that point, we could also go into the mezzanine capital markets for that. That would change kind of our structure there. But and our partners, we don't really want to ask for additional equity in that case. But additionally to the 12 thing that was the lowest density, we were unable to increase the density through an appeal process with the zoning board. And so to that point, that was kind of the maximum amount of units we could create. And I understand your concern with the LIHTC project, but we would be looking for other sources of financing that would come probably from mezzanine.
Connected with the income change.
Likely.
So, I mean, that is an important part.
Right.
Part of the selling point is that we're retaining affordability, but you are very likely going to have a hard time actually doing that. Certainly.
I think in the beginning, with our due diligence, in the beginning, we would make sure we'd be able to get those historic tax credits because that would change our plan. So
Before we deploy equity
yeah,
or
before
money
we
anywhere.
set the final plan, we would want to make sure we get all those tax credits.
I mean,
That wasn't clear is that they're applying for the 4% bonds.
Okay.
So the LIHTC
that needs to be mentioned. It was unclear. Why 12 units? What do you guys know, like what percentage of this whole project does that represent?
That's what's currently in that building. It's We just wanted to reconstruct it, enhance it a little bit, and also just like take it as acquisition and make sure that they will be affordable units. And that's what's currently there.
Okay. I guess where I'm going with this is like, seems to me, and I know, you're saying that those were the rent rates that were there before. You're gonna go in and you're gonna renovate this building and make it better quality, right? But it still seems to me that there's a little bit of concentration of those affordability units. Why not try to spread that a little bit more throughout? And potentially, if you start to leak into some of these other buildings, 2502 Jenna or 4528, you can get more housing units there that are affordable too. But those actually might be the better ones if they're larger to do the light tech too, if they're larger projects.
I was just gonna say in terms of the size of that project, it's just because, since it is in a fully like residential area, we kind of want to do more interior work instead of like more construction and disturbing the area. I think that was one of like the main points, why we made that decision.
Okay, and sometimes LIHTC, they do incentivize scattered site development too.
Right.
So if you did have the units kind of go throughout more of the whole project, you could actually get that tax credit potentially applied to multiple buildings, not just the one too. And that might help
I
your
think
financing.
the 2424 Jenna Street has the ability to also, we could make that affordable housing as well.
Relatedly, I was gonna ask if are they all rental? You talked about the rental, but are there any for sale housing?
There's no co-op condominium project, other than the only one that could be the duplex right here. That's the only one that could be market rate and enforceable.
But you have a plan for that, so it's all, somebody's gonna manage all of it.
It's all built out for leasing.
Well, I thought John mentioned the end, so I thought the selling storage again was a really good way to connect to the audience, right? So I think that was good, and I also think especially for project like transitioning between speakers can be awkward, especially to focus on the presentation, but I felt like that was good. Transition that made sense and made it feel like the whole presentation. Felt like and I guess I wonder, just from a design standpoint, is there a center? What's the, you talk about the intersection of Corinth and Napoleon being a really important intersection. It doesn't feel like that's a destination.
On that corner is the community center, so I think that would kind of be like the highlight of that area where people come together and will help benefit the neighborhood the most. But I think just for that in general, we have a lot of, as you can see from our walk groups, like mixed use buildings with restaurants, retail stores, so that'll kind of just be the highlight of the area. As well as that Jenna Street corridor.
I have a question about the target demographic and the average persona in the area. And when I say average persona, that comes from like when you do your market analysis, like seeing who the main concentration of like demographic is in the area.
Oh, so say that our target market.
Yeah, target demographic.
Well, to me, they're two different things, right? So target demographic is who you're trying to attract to your development for whatever type of interest. And then your persona is the concentration of who is specifically in the area already.
Yeah, so I think Evan, you got to touch upon the commercial aspect of it. Like, there's a lot of big for the tenancy itself, but in terms of people that we're tracking for the housing units and the users of the actual space, we're thinking young professionals in there between 20 to 40 years old, people that are already in use of the area in their current tenancy, but also for moving in people that have been priced out of the neighborhood and can still come back to the neighborhood in some of our affordable units. In that one of Napoleon for an older generation. To that point, it's kind of all subject to see what actually comes together in terms of the actual people we can get into the neighborhood at delivery. Sorry, you couldn't see me up on the other side here.
And like I said, we didn't want to change the neighborhood too much. We wanted to keep the same feeling and not feel like we're changing the whole thing, even though we are acquiring a lot of buildings. We just wanted to enhance the area that's already there.
You guys know what the AMI is for the census tract right now?
I think we looked that up.
I think that's- I mean, just to put a number to it, I think that's why I call it.
It was 50 to $70,000. Yeah.
How much?
It was kind of a big range. I feel like we had to, 50 to 70.
But also, since like, I guess like for this specific area, it's around that, but then also the people like, closer to campus, like to the community, it's obviously higher end, so it's kind of down, it's getting lower and lower. But I think if I'm correct, I think it was around that range from 50 to 70. For individual, family, I think it's a lot.
And that's if that's the right number, that's a kind of an average. Something that people who are maybe having trouble staying in the neighborhood are below that.
Right.
So just thinking about whether they're gonna be served by an 80% AMI project, if that's the goal. And, irrespective of whether they're the same people, which is a whole separate, and really important question, are they even the people who are they even a financial opportunity to stay in the neighborhood? That's a little bit of a question.
Oh, yeah, so
The question is,
Yeah, so I think it definitely with affordable housing, I think that is an important aspect, and I'd emphasize that the market rates that we are moving for, they're not like the high end market rates. We're gonna kind of try to still keep it affordable for people that live there already, and also for an opportunity for families to live there, couples or individuals that are in that kind of, average income range. So I don't think we're gonna actually displace anyone. I think everyone's gonna actually be able to afford staying in this area.
what does that mean? So you're not gonna try, if somebody offers you more money for a space, you're gonna turn them down.
No, I guess that's.
When you say you're trying to go for the low end market rate, if I'm an investor, maybe, I want to understand more about how that should work. But if I'm a community member, I want to understand, what does that even mean? How am I ever gonna know? And how is that, what's the price of moving to come tell me how it's a low end market rate, whatever
Yeah, I think we definitely wanted to prioritize affordability and make sure that that was like a key point of our project. And we also discussed the possibility of promoting these units to the hospital workers and having them have affordable housing that's nearby their workspace, which is a big amount of workers in the area.
And from the investor side, since we're adding a lot of commercial units, that's where most of our opportunities. So we're able to have, after Caesar did his market, analyzing and seeing what the median income is, and what he decided would be a good rent to stay in that area and on the lower end. That's how we're able to show the investors that we're still making money by having all of our commercial tenants.
What's interesting is like the terms that are being used. Now I get a better understanding of who your target customer is that you're trying to attract. So what I thought was affordable housing is really workforce housing, right? Which is a little like bump up in like the rent that people would accumulate. So if that's the case, if your target demographic is young professionals who work in the healthcare sector, who might not be as wealthy as like the lawyer or the doctor or something like that, then this starts to make sense about you trying to make housing in the area that has already been, just priced up so much and has displaced so many people, affordable for that specific demographic. That is very helpful for me to understand what the overall goal of this is, as opposed to trying to make something seem affordable or seem like it is something that it is really not. Because when looking at, I think it was like 2820 Napoleon Avenue or something like that, and that concentration of units, a thought that I had was it would be so cool if this was like a elderly, income restricted residence that was targeted to people that might have been homeowners in the neighborhood who unfortunately have become displaced because of living on a fixed income or whatever. And then that idea of a community garden could be great because, sometimes elders suffer from like fresh food scarcity or something like that. But since we have narrowed down your target demographic to that of young healthcare professionals, it starts to make more sense and the idea becomes more cohesive to me.
All right, I'll say one more comment. I would say if there's any more comments, I would think we take one more.
I have one overall comment, so it shouldn't count. I think both projects so far, like I want to see something with more bold presented to expand the increased density of the last time, or if probably some new construction that could be some more innovative design and just really transformative rather than, I think there's a lot of work on the finances and kind of story about meeting in, of course, but I feel like this is an opportunity in school to say, we're actually going to tear down one of these buildings because we're going to do something that's really transformative, and it's just better. And I feel like everybody is sort of saying, well, we're gonna fit within the building and use it for tax credits. So that's
do
not my
have a
criticism, but,
few buildings, these ones right here will be new construction, like I said, they'd be kind of similar to that Bearcat one where it'd be mixed use. So we do have them. I think it's just kind of hard to explain since we acquired so many buildings to get to detail all of those things, but they are thought out.
And one of those big aspects is the mitigation of risk in this sense. Undertaking a full-on tear-down project, which some of them are, but they're smaller scale. It's obviously a risk and something that in this program we've been taught really to kind of factor that in.
you're building a parking garage, but that's also a design element. Potentially, it's going to be a part of the story. So it's I think it's a common thing.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This one or yours?
All right.
Hi, everybody. We are Crescent Development Team. My name is Grace Voorhees. I'm the architect on the team.
My name is Paul Sunshine. I'm the CFO of Crescent Development.
My name is Grace Cook, and I'm the COO of Crescent Development. And my name is Carrie Erkman, and I'm the project manager.
So as Crescent Development, we are focused on building sustainably, creating long-term value through the community with transit-oriented development, adaptive reuse, and environmental principles. So we wanted to create a project that provided a place for the community to gather. So our project is called the Crescent Corridor. And overall, it introduces a new boardwalk into the community. A new place for people to gather. So it would be perpendicular to the Fred Street and allow a dynamic outdoor space. So we are acquiring 15 properties throughout this 4-block radius, and then building all new construction to introduce 128 residential units, 66,000 square feet of commercial units. We're removing all street parking all the way down Fred, which we've had some pushback, but Carrie will talk about that more. And then we are replacing that street parking with parking garages. One in our 4-block radius, and then one further down Fred to account for both ends. But we really wanted to, like other groups mentioned, we want to make Fred a walkable corridor. So that means removing street parking, introducing bike lanes, and making it walkable friendly. Because right now, if you bike down Fred, you feel like you're going to get hit by a car. So we don't really want that. But Grace will talk about our market study, and then we'll dive into the financials.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. So I wanted to start out with understanding why we chose this RFP, what we think this community has in terms of opportunities for development that are currently missing or are overlooked in the area. So starting here on our roadway orientation, we wanted to get an understanding of how dense the roadways are and how open it is, and how this 4-block radius serves as either a welcoming point to the current corridor, or how it is currently blocking off and is a bit standoffish to traffic and the community. We currently believe that with the amount of one-way roads and with the lack of width and walking space along these roads, as well as bike space and transit, that it is not very welcoming and does not serve as the amount of community space and invitational corridor walk space, whether it's via bicycle or transit or ride share, that it potentially could be. So continuing along those lines, we wanted to look at the transit that is currently in place, including the St. Charles streetcar line, the Purette bus, and then the Napoleon bus that goes on, continues up to Canal and Mid-City. So while these currently are serving the populations that work at, say, the hospital and live in these neighborhoods, they are not highly utilized modes of transit. You know, streetcar is partially for tourism in the Garden District. These bus lanes are taking people out of Central City in the Fred area instead of bringing them in to our desired development. And so we have some ideas about how we can improve that and how we can bring people into the space to gather that Carrie will touch on later in the presentation. Then we also wanted to look at population density and how it relates to income in the area. We understand that this 4-block group is, you can potentially look at it as facing west and how it brings you into the current corridor, but we do not want to leave out the lower income areas and higher density areas on the east side of Napoleon. We consider them a very crucial part of our development. And in order to preserve the character of the neighborhood, we want to consider them in things like our density, our job creation, and our transit opportunities, which we will again touch on a little bit more later in the presentation. So now I'll pass it off to Cole to talk about our finances.
So it's no understatement to say that this is a large project. With 128 residential units and 16 commercial units, it would generate about $3.2 million annually in just rent. So how are we going to fund this? Looking at our sources and uses, you can see from our uses that this project would cost just under $53 million. So to construct and get going. We'll fund this looking at our sources, starting with a loan that we have secured for just under $30 million with a 4.25 APR spread over 30 years at a 75% loan to cost. We're seeking $4.7 million in equity to complete the project, in addition to $1.2 million, which we're gaining from the city of New Orleans as a result of our sustainable and pedestrian-friendly oriented goals of this project. And finally, we will be receiving $17 million in new market tax credits.
Yeah, just touch on the new market tax credits a little bit, since that's an important piece to our investors and community and the two-lane group. We do believe we can secure these based on our community job creation plan, which we've laid out here for you. In summary, we do believe this commercial space and our residential space as well will also create about 125 permanent jobs, and that's a conservative estimate, depending on what type of tenants we get in these spaces, and for about 500 temporary development jobs during construction. We also have promised with the community as part of our work, meetings with them that 50% of our tenants will be community-based groups, either from this locality or from the region. We have a mix of nationwide and local tenants that reinforce the community instead of bring in and displace current business owners, because we encourage them to be a part of our development and to work with us to make this better space for the locality. So with that, we'll dive a little bit more into our timeline and rental.
So start looking at cash flow, just acknowledging the project as a whole. We'd have an NOI starting at 1.24 in year one, escalating to 2.56 by year 10, with a debt service coverage ratio of about 1.2 in the first year, escalating to 1.45 by year 10. All that being said, our before tax cash flow would start in year one at 364,000 and hit just over 800,000 by year 10. And looking at our timeline, you can see we have outlined our goals, trying to aim to have financing secured and breaking ground by the beginning of September of 2021, finishing the project and beginning leasing by June of 2022. Ideally, our lease-up period would end at the beginning of November of 2022.
So touching more on the design of the project, in these two blocks, mainly those highlighted areas, we're acquiring 15 different lots, but half of those are existing buildings and half are empty lots. And the largest building would be the existing school. But for what we want to do and to increase density, we are starting fresh on that site and building townhome duplex structures. And then on the other side of front, it would be more of a commercial corridor with residential above, commercial on the first floor, making it a dynamic outdoor space that invites people in. Like many groups, the rideshare is an issue on Brett. So we've introduced a drop-off pickup area right on the edge of our site, but then parking a little further off Brett to help with traffic flow. We wanted to keep it close to Napoleon to make sure people kind of got out of their cars and then walked the rest. But if you approach Brett from the other side, we would have a parking garage closer to Humble Bagel. But we wanted to keep the Bearcat building and the Amcraft building because those are two newer existing sites that are doing well, but we'll make sure to tie them into our plan and make sure they're fully incorporated. But our main corridor is that boardwalk feeling that actually cuts through the middle of the block to make it extra safe for pedestrians and have commercial on both sides. And Carrie's going to touch on our community involvement.
Yeah, so our community involvement plan, so starting out, we have some transportation initiatives that we're taking on to, help the community and the area surrounding our corridor. And so some of these initiatives that we're doing are, like we've said before, we're creating a new bike lane, we're creating designated rideshare areas, and we're getting rid of some on-street parking and putting in more off-street parking. So this plan, so we want to incentivize the development of streetcar lines in the future and maybe potentially see something running up Napoleon this way. And so we thought maybe this is something that we can continue to incentivize and work on for the future while this is not a solid plan yet. And then in addition to that, we're going to be working with the city initiative of moving New Orleans to create the corridor, a corridor of safe bicycle and pedestrian paths. Because like we mentioned, it is not really feasible to ride your bike or walk in this area, and we are trying to create a very walking friendly feel in the area. In addition, we are planning to add over 10,000 square feet of off-street parking in our parking garages, which is equivalent to about 200 parking spots. And then we are also creating the designated rideshare spot, which you can kind of see is right here along Fred, for the pickup and drop off of Ubers and Lyft and those as well. We're also, as you can see, they have the boardwalk and green spaces, which only incentivizes people to come and walk instead of driving and all of that. And so one challenge that we have figured out, have run into, is that the community is not sure about getting rid of parking on Ferret. That is a huge concern for a lot of people. And so one way that we're working to combat this is through our town hall meetings with the community. And so we're trying to find a way for them to, still find what they need through our development. And so we've created a community involvement plan, which will be carried out through our neighborhood outreach program and town hall meetings in July of 2021. And so we will be holding virtual meetings. So let me restart. Sorry. So COVID is a huge thing why we've seen a big transition from a lot of these in-person community meetings to virtual meetings. In addition to that, a lot of the times when you have these community meetings, the demographics attending are mostly white, older people who own homes in the area. And there's a lot of demographics that you aren't reaching, like people who don't own homes, first-time home buyers, younger residents, single parents, people like that. And so maybe by making this virtual, recording these live meetings, we're reaching a wider group of people to see what, the community wants and not a certain demographic in the area. And so we will be holding virtual meetings. They will all be recorded and posted live onto our website. And there will also be a text line for people to, text questions and comments and ask if they can't be there in person. There'll be contact information and other resources on our website to show them the information they need. We'll make sure we're sharing design renderings and project graphics and stuff with them throughout our project. They're very clear about what's going on throughout the project, and as well can sign up to receive updates throughout.
So with that, we'll open it up to questions, but we hope you enjoyed our presentation.
Carrie, I have a question for you. I like the idea of the virtual. It's going to come with hiccups up. As much as you're trying to reach this kind of younger population, I think my concern is also Wi-Fi access to a lot of people too. They actually just did a study this past year because of COVID, because there are a lot of school kids who are now being forced to go online, and they realized that I think it's like 30–40% of the population in the city didn't have Wi-Fi set up at their home or can't afford it. So that's going to present a whole new set of challenges. You might actually have to go into some sort of hybrid delivery.
Absolutely, and it will be a hybrid. I know that wasn't super clear, but the idea is that it is a live meeting that you can attend in person that is recorded and posted online for those who can't either view live online or live in person. And so there'll be multiple options to deal with that and other ways to communicate if you can't be there or if you're on Zoom or in person.
My other comment was, I'm still having a tough time grasping what this boardwalk's going to look like. I think that was one issue or one challenge with your presentation was, I know you probably haven't engaged with to get a rendering of it, but like, is there a precedent somewhere else where this has been done that at least we could look at a photo and say, oh, okay, I get it. This is what this thing's going to look like. What are some of the precedents that's out there for this type of development?
So I think maybe the word boardwalk was a poor choice, but because that you kind of think to like California, whatever, actual boardwalk. This is more like a paved pathway with green space. And we do want to draw from New Orleans architecture and have balconies, and it wouldn't be like a modern, out of the blue, out of context. We really want to draw on the New Orleans context and make sure that it reflects that. But we should definitely include a rendering of some sorts for our town hall meetings.
Has this been done in New Orleans before?
I think that the closest related project would be the one in the CBD districts that the domain company did with dynamic, it's not necessarily like a corridor, but having the commercial space below and residential above. So introducing restaurants and shops and residential space all in one area.
Fulton Alley is another one.
Okay.
I should look at just an example of some promenade that's been basically banned cars and said, you know, people are going to be on the ground in their shoes and have retail facing that.
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's been done in other cities. It's definitely more popular in European cities, but I think the US is getting there slowly. So we definitely want to be one of the first projects and set a precedent for the rest of the country, but drawing on inspiration from Berlin and Paris, cities that have temporarily banned cars from areas or done it permanently also.
Okay. I think logistically too, on the planning side of this, because this is going to, even if this was a plan for your architect, if you said, oh, this is what I want to see, this is going to fall into your lap as a problem and something to deal with, which is logistically, how are you going to get people across that road safely? Because you're basically, it looks like you're proposing that this boardwalk is going to actually go across Ferret Street, kind of a mid-block potential intersection, new intersection to slow down traffic even more. So you're starting to tiptoe into the city's territory about how you're going to get your people across that road safely. Are you going to pay for it? How are you going to get cars to stop? Obviously, you're going to lose at least a couple street spaces, but do you lose even more because now you have to have increased sight lines so that people don't just poke out in front of parked cars?
We aren't having street parking on the site. So we've worked with the city and we're actually removing all street parking along Fret and replacing that with off-site garage parking. So in terms of sightlines, that shouldn't be an issue. And in our timeline, you can see that the street modification is actually a separate phase. And that would include like a designated highlighted intersection crosswalk right there. But we're working with the city to co-fund the modification of Fred.
So you eliminated parking on Denver.
On Fred.
But also on your.
So this agenda is actually running right here one side. We'll maintain that street parking.
You're not closing the street.
Correct. We're adding a promenade, not adding it. Yes.
Do you, in your experience, does the drivers stop at this?
There currently are none that I'm aware of, but except for maybe the airport. The airport is the one I can think of in the city.
Right.
Yeah, and especially working with the city on that, we can ensure and make those new regulations clear to the rideshare companies, such as how they did at the airport.
But the airport is very, much more regulated.
Right.
There's,
yes.
If I stop and walk ahead of time, I'm gonna drop somebody off. Run to the place they're going, I'm not gonna drive up the block or two.
Right. Yeah, we want to make it easy and very clear.
But I'm not gonna do it when I'm upstairs, I'm gonna do it because I'm serving a customer who wants to go there.
So do you think that if we were to introduce, since this is one kind of entrance to Fred, do you think if we had a rideshare pickup and drop off on each end that allowed people to say, oh, you can't actually go in? I mean, you could if you wanted to say break the rules, but to see that rideshare pickup drop off before even getting to your final destination on either end would make a difference.
I mean, it's sort of a question, everybody's had this, and I think it sounds like a great idea, but I'm a former cab driver. Never would I stop points away in order to meet some rule that in theory helps everybody, but I see cab drivers parking in the middle of the street all the time, to let people outside. I
I do agree that I think shifting it to the main thoroughfares with more focus on Napoleon, which you can get in and out of, you can do U-turns. Once you turn into Barrett, you're kind of stuck on there until you get all the way, I think, to Jefferson.
So maybe switching it to this corner where.
Yeah, because you're just introducing even more problems with traffic flow, with that crosswalk, with the stop for Uber driver trying to get cars in and off the street. I mean, that's a lot to have to program on that one block.
Speaking to that briefly, and going a little bit back to John's question, a similar project to this in my hometown in Atlanta was the Battery, where they built SunTrust Park for AJ Stadium. And they have designated Uber and Lyft drop-offs that are normally set up during game days, not all the time. But one thing that I've been surprised about for when I've been going there for events and concerts and games was the amount of drivers that will stop at the designated spots. Since the app tracks their location, a lot of people that drive, especially for main source of income, are nervous about getting on bad terms with Uber and maybe getting suspended for a temporary period of time because that would affect their income. So generally, I think by coordinating with Uber and Lyft to have that acknowledged on the app, it would put a little bit more pressure on those drivers to acknowledge that and to adhere to the intended use.
So that's our plan currently. Obviously, the town hall meetings are later in July, so we'd be open to eliminating only one side, but I think to achieve the feel of Fred that we're going for, we want to eliminate all street parking. Yes. Well, so
none of those people are gonna go.
we're
That's just my
hoping,
opinion,
right,
and especially the guy with the hardware store. If you think some contractor is gonna go parking lot, come over there and buy some blocks that he needs for a house. And there's no way he would ever go for that, because as an ex-general contractor, I had to go walk in the parking lot and walk back to all this stuff. I'm just gonna drive a little further and find the guy that's out of park in front of us. I mean, and that is the human nature.
So-
Everybody wants to park in front of the bank, in front of the Walmart, in front of whatever they do. Everybody wants to do it.
What
That's something you
I-
gotta think about.
what I think is interesting is in the current parking scenario, you can circle Fred 5 times until you find that
I
front
agree.
spot.
I
And people
agree.
would be willing to do that, but they wouldn't be willing to park maybe a block away
I agree with
in
that.
an easier area. So I think it is going to be hard to change people's minds, but in the grand scheme of things, it might be a long-term benefit, but it'll come with some challenges for sure.
There's gonna be a lot of resistance. We had a couple of those meetings about the parking. Everybody gripes about it. Oh, you can't do that, because we won't have any parking. We won't have any parking. We don't have any parking.
One thing I wonder is during COVID, if there are people that come out and put in things that people more regular. I wonder if there's a, you know, you can mix it with a sort of a tech solution where you're
Right.
if you need to get a lot, you're probably not gonna get on your app, if there's a lot, you have to contractor, come out. But in theory, we could do that. You know, you could say, oh, I need, here's a lot. And instead of just no parking bike lanes, there's a designated kind of engine and waiting area.
Mhm.
So I can pull on there. And run in. But I feel like there needs to be more of a solution.
It might work, it's just some of it's just, I don't know. I don't know.
But I like how bold it is.
Oh, yeah. it's awesome. Don't tell Betty yet, we have, don't tell them it's gonna be about total, no parking on Front Street, because you won't have everybody show up.
Right.
But if you said we're gonna eliminate parking on Front, the Jefferson, every one of those business owners is gonna be in there, we can roll it out.
I think there's also a kind of an intervention where you know, instead of saying, we're gonna eliminate parking for all time. You can say, look, we're gonna, this Sunday, we've got the Friday Festival, we're gonna eliminate parking this weekend. You know, or maybe it's during the week or something, like you test it out so that people aren't so, just like the
you learn something too, or maybe it really doesn't work the way you thought.
So that's how a lot of cities have been testing it. And I think that's a good jumping off point, especially since our main construction is happening before the street modification. So maybe during construction, when the project is getting finished, before we actually take away street parking, you could test it out in that way and see if it actually works. Yeah, totally possible.
Yeah, thankfully by that point, the project will have built a rapport with the neighborhood and hopefully have a good basis of trust with them to undergo some experimentation on these fronts and find out what's best for them.
I'm also surprised to this point, no one has talked about other uses of parking spaces too, like programming at the restaurant. I think that's kind of one of these things that people are tiptoeing into right now because of COVID. Big question is it going to stay?
Right, yeah.
Are we going to continue to allow usage of sidewalks and parking spaces, stalls on the street for things like seating? You know, I think that would be something to explore too.
We briefly considered that some of the major costs that came along with that would be expanding the sidewalk, which is a higher cost than what we're looking at currently. And also we considered that with the sidewalk cafes and such, and then having bike lane and parking, you're left with a narrow, unsafe scenario like we currently have. So we're open to the idea, but it's currently not feasible within our budget.
Because I think that's one of the ways that developers and planners and city members and community members have kind of tiptoed around the parking issue is that people do like eating on sidewalks and stuff. They do like outdoor dining. So that's been kind of a concession to say, we're going to get rid of a space, but in turn, you're going to get this really cool thing. You know, you can eat outside in the sun or under shade, hopefully. So I would say definitely think about some exploration in that area.
I guess I'll add one other thing, is you've got a whole plan. Give a lot of thought to what the fallback position would be, what the alternative would be, in case you don't get complete value. You got to pay some attention.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And we have, you know, a priority list somewhat of this commercial space being really what we think is the highest benefit and highest best use of the community. And so when it comes to, say, acquiring the school, building those out of townhouses, we're willing to make more compromises there. But you're right that we have a lot of pressure from the community and a lot of analysis to do on how to make this best work for everybody involved.
I just want to make mention of highlighting the environmental amenities. I know that it was stated earlier that that was one of the values that you wanted to contribute to the neighborhood. So just offering making more explicit the places of refuge that, especially like all of these pedestrians and bicyclists, since that appears to be your target demographic, could utilize after they get off the bus or after they stop bicycling. I think that would be very helpful just to highlight that extra level of added value that people could receive from coming to this corridor. And then also, when you guys were talking about eliminating parking, which I agree with the jury, like that's going to be an extremely hard, so especially in a city like New Orleans, but 1111 Lincoln Road in Miami does just that. Like there is no parking along that corridor, and most of the parking is relegated to the bordering streets and to a very large parking garage that serves different programming purposes. So I think that kind of adds to John and Cassius's comments about making the elimination of one thing attractive by providing a different amenity more attractive to the end user. And then also, I just want to make mention that communities give spaces meaning. And I think a lot of times as designers, we want to dictate how people move throughout spaces and find their ways through neighborhoods. But I just want to make mention that residents create their own experiences, especially over time. And then also, I think the text line of public input is a fabulous idea. I agree with John about just Wi-Fi needing to be like a public utility, and it's not that for everybody, but almost everybody has a cell phone through one way or another. So I think that's a great way of engagement.
I think the best case study for what her comment was about like trying to control the flow of traffic and as best as you think you can do it, people are gonna find a better way to do it or their own way. It's just this quad out here. I always love walking on Tulane's campus, seeing, basically you see these like, they call them cow paths, you know, where it's like this direct line of dead grass where people have decided, nope, I'm cutting across here. I mean, that's the whole reason why when you guys go out in front of LBC in the middle of campus, they specifically, I was sitting in a lot of those meetings, they specifically programmed vegetation along the outer ring of that. Just try to stop students from crossing over and cutting across and cutting these cow paths in the lawn. They still do it. Students still climb over those bushes and do it. So it's really interesting. So you actually learn some stuff from on campus that's going to follow you guys the rest of your life in other projects.
Very true. Well, thank you all. That was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I love the solidarity acts. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
No, so we did this before, so this is like a year back, a couple years back, so we did it right before Rouse. But Rouse didn't want to have to.
Oh, I got it.
We can check it out. So we were just looking at.
It was like halfway through the process. And we could tell how careful.
That is great.
All right.
How's it going, everybody? We are the Barkley Development Group. My name is Max Trickle. I'm the head of development.
Hi, guys. I'm Sam Robbins. I am the Chief Financial Officer for our group.
My name's Joe Moynihan. I'm the lead architect and designer for this.
I'm Brad Modica, and my role in this company is the market analyst as well as the head of sustainability. So our company, Barclay Capital, we're focused on two main things. We are going to make our investors money, and we're going to help the community. Those are our main things. We're a vertically integrated real estate fund that focuses on future growth more than anything else. So when COVID came in, it had to make us rethink our whole plan, which looking back, we are now actually thankful for because we were able to see a lot of things that we couldn't before. For example, we're in a very quickly changing time. The disbursement of wealth is changing as fast as it ever will in the history of, or ever has in the history of America. So $30 trillion is currently in the next 10 years projected to go from the baby boomers all the way down to the millennials and Gen Z. So our concepts are all to appeal to these said millennials and Gen Z. For example, we're making a pool bar, like a outdoor cool hip pool bar. We'll put up murals all over the place, neon signs, everything cool and Instagrammable for young people, because that's really what many young people value over anything, is having an experience that looks cool and you can document for Instagram. It's a very important thing to these people. Then we'll also have a Whole Foods as younger people, also more so than older people, are more likely to shop somewhere that they look at as healthy and also sustainable and good for the environment. And then our last development, we also have apartments on top of both of these developments, but our last development would be a bar and restaurant that will be across from the pool bar that will also try to make young and hip and make it to have experiential dishes that you would also be able to Instagram and show your friend and be like, this is so cool. We took that concept from a restaurant called Bard and G's in Miami Beach, which is like, they'll sell you the biggest cotton candy you've ever seen. Their plating will just be over the top and all that. So the concept with that is just have everything appeal to these hip young people and have young people want to flock there, which is also key with our location. As you guys all know, location, it's everything in the real estate market at the end of the day. So we believe that these things that appeal to younger people is very critical for our location that we are operating out of, as there's over 15,000 college students within a mile away. And also New Orleans in general just is a hip, younger city. So we think that all of those concepts will really help us with this younger content. And Max over here is going to get more details.
So in the acquisition phase of our development, in the 4-block area for that, we definitely get a look at the demographic information as well as the available amenities that are already in place there. So looking at the amenities, there's a lot of restaurants nearby, there's coffee spots, there's schools. We see like a lot of area that's looking for revitalization and looking for a lot of energy to come into it and experience to draw consumers there, because a lot of the traffic and consumer base there is foot traffic. So looking at what is actually specifically available, this graph is based on both walk and transit stores in the community. And as you can see, there's accessibility to pretty much every possible necessity you would want in a development area except for groceries, because as our development company has clarified, we are a year in history here where COVID is just starting, and this is before the development of the houses, just to clarify that. So we're trying to fill the niche that they chose to fill in the same area with a Whole Foods prior to their development. So looking specifically at the demographic information, this is a 3-layer policy map that takes into account age from 18 to 34, median income per family with at least $45,000, and a population density of 2,500 per square mile. So these metrics are important because, as we said, we're targeting a younger age group. It's like younger adults, college age students, young working professionals. But at the same time, we don't want to try to take people out of the community that may want to live there, may already be there, they want to return to that community. So we're trying to have as much affordable housing as possible. So looking at our specific acquisitions, this is where we're planning to do our apartment complex for the Whole Foods. There's currently an apartment complex there now with a lot of retail units on the bottom. Our plan is to revitalize that apartment complex, make it more focused on affordable housing, and to clear out long units, multiple retail units to create one large Whole Foods with an area of about 25,000 square feet. And then looking at the other rest of our developments, we have an apartment complex with a live music bar and restaurant right across the street at 4528 Fournette. And then similarly, across the development, we have a boutique pool, hotel and pool bar where the church and school currently are. And then our final acquisition will be an assisted living facility, also at another religious establishment on 2400 Napoleon. So just looking at the actual specifics of what's interesting about our development, we're planning to, across the board, be implementing some rooftop urban farming, where my friend Brad will talk a little bit more about that, but we're trying to help out the community in terms of growing things there, providing them with resources, and just having like a greener feel to the entire community, because that'll be something that's very easy to recognize throughout all of our developments. Can you talk a little more about that?
So yeah, that's one of the main things we value in this development is being sustainable and helping the community. And we feel like these rooftop urban farming gardens / rain gardens would be very big for that, as one of the biggest issues facing New Orleans right now is flooding, and the rainwater doesn't have anywhere to go. We don't have enough rain gardens in different ways to deal with that rain. So we will be putting rain gardens on the roof of our buildings that will also double as urban farms, which will be able to give back food, donate food to the community, as well as help the community with flooding. We will be reaching out to Watson Lamb, a professor at Tulane, who's in charge of the urban farming program at Tulane, and we will hopefully be able to get Tulane students to come in and help with the urban farming as part of their service learning requirement, which I actually did myself, which is, I think, a very good program, and we'll have a lot of people there to help grow food for the community as well as administer rainwater. And then also at our assisted living facility, we'll also be hoping to get Tulane students to volunteer there through these different service learning classes to just help around and keep company for the people struggling there. And we also think we will very much help the community through all of our developments by supplying jobs. We're projecting to have between 75 and 100 long-term jobs between our 4 developments that would definitely help the community in general have that sort of work, play, live mentality that a lot of people are looking for, where they want to go now, where they can go out to the cool pool bars, they can work on this block and live all in the same place, which has been very important, a very important concept to our company.
When looking at our specific affordable housing metrics, we, as I said in the policy map earlier, we based it around the demographic information of having median income per family of 45,000. So we use that to calculate around roughly 14,000 in living expenses per year as the estimate as affordable housing. So we've used that in our rent rates and stuff that we take into account. And we're planning to have affordable units pretty much across the board in both of our apartment complexes. And then looking at transit, so there's a few streets in here that definitely can get higher traffic during like high traffic hours, rush hour. So the red highlighted streets are the ones that have increased traffic, obviously as expected for that during rush hours. So we're trying to plan for this development to be like a very experiential thing, as we stated, where we want people to be coming in, coming out, like really looking to go visit this area. So we're going to implement a 2-car queue rideshare app waiting line on Napoleon, where up to 2 cars can go pull over, and there's a drop point where someone can say, okay, if I'm in this 4-block development, typically we're assuming they'll be coming from the pool bar. If we're in this 4-block development and I want to ride home, I'd choose this pickup spot, and there theoretically be a car on waiting for me. So we're definitely looking at adding that, as well as a bus stop in the center of our location, because we know there's a bus that already goes through for that. But adding a stop right in the middle of our development could add some value to people getting on and off. And then looking down at specifically what we're planning to do within each of these developments, Joe's going to talk about our featured development, our boutique hotel and pool bar, which is going to be right here where the school and church are.
Yeah, thank you. As for our development phase, Max touched on it a little bit. I'll elaborate. So 4528 Ferret, right here, that's where we're going to have apartment. Oh, sorry, right here, that's the apartment complex with retail unit on the first floor. Is the first one. So the retail on the first floor will be restaurant and live music, and we're going to have 10 apartments varying in size on the second floor. For the next development on 2400 Napoleon Ave, we're going to have 25 single bedroom units for an assisted living facility to further help out the community. all of these developments do have parking included. There's 10% parking to
The developments have an
the space
average
there.
percentage across the board of 10% parking allocated for each, but we obviously know that given Whole Foods' popularity and given the boutique hotels' expected popularity, that's probably not enough. So we've definitely taken into account that in the future development. We're gonna have a very large section of parking that should be accessible. And then similarly, we've purchased this lot in addition to our acquisition of the Whole Foods area, where we're gonna have parking in that area.
So that's a 4525 for it, and there'll be 35 units there, also varying in size. And our featured development is this boutique hotel and pool bar. It's going to take up almost a third of this block of this area right here. And then on the side, there'll be a parking that's private and free for that development. And then this whole yellow area right here, we're filling out with a parking lot, which could fit up to 150 cars, and that'll just be pay to park. So, because the problem with parking around Fred is just it's not available really. So it's going to help out a lot with that. This pool bar, again, this has 10 units, different sizes, king bed, some twins. This is the second floor plan right here, with balconies that are privatized with walls, so kind of get your own exclusive experience there. And on the first floor lobby, we'll have 5 more rooms and then a small little window for pick up food, and if you want any food to eat here, it's all. This is the bar area. Everything's allowed in there. You can bring food from outside because there's so many other restaurants around there. It's totally acceptable. And then this will just be bar and pool and great environment for the 10,000 plus college students that live here. It's the most desirable kind of venue. So I think that will be very successful.
So we're definitely looking to have that be at the focal point of our development because that'll both draw consumers and serve as a place for consumers to go after being consumers of other areas of our development. We think it could be a draw for families, for older students, for young professionals, really anyone who just wants to go to the pool, have a good drink, and be in an area where there's a lot to do and see and walk around. And similarly, as you can see from our elevation, we've included some urban farming on the rooftop there. And we're definitely looking to try to maximize our parking, as we talked about. So we know that adding a ton of residential units that are all affordable and also having Whole Foods in there is definitely asking for increased traffic to an already high traffic area. So parking was definitely something we very heavily considered throughout this development and trying to make sure that it is a sufficient amount to house those developments. But given how much space we've allocated for it, I think right now we're looking in that direction. Now we're going to pass it off to Sam, who's going to talk about some more financial information.
Hi guys, so yeah, we have our finances down here. Basically the plan is that in 2021, we acquire it and we get all the contracts and construction, and it takes about 5 years to do all of that and stabilize. And then at that point, we hold it for 10 years and we sell it in 2036. Here you can see we have our operating cash flow grows over time. By the end of the project, we have our total rate of return is 28%, and we profit at $37 million from selling the development. And our debt yield in year 10 is 20%. We got the equity of $7 million from an opportunity fund that we started. So we're also collecting up to a 20. So in that case, we would get 20% of the profits, which would be $8 million for us as a developer after adding the 2% of the investment.
So this is the bulk of our development. You guys like to answer questions?
I'll start. Who would be the operator of your hotel?
So I've heard of the Drifter Hotel. So it's somewhat close to campus, but far enough away that students typically have to go there. Whereas as previous was discussed, this is considered somewhat walking distance between students and also not as much of a hike. And comparatively, if you look at where the Drifter is located, like there's a nice Jamaican restaurant across the street. Other than that, there's not really a lot of amenities or things here that would draw people to the community. So we reached out to them and talked to them about maybe having a second location, and they definitely showed interest in that. And we're thinking that they might actually like this development a little bit better than the first one because they'll have more surrounding community to draw to the location.
Okay. Same comment as the previous group, like you want to highlight that. Any sort of like, I think that this would be a good user, or, you know, because as it stands, it looks like a really high risk venture. That especially if you guys are proposing to run it and be the operators, I don't know what your capacity is.
We were definitely planning to partner with the coach.
Yeah, so any sort of like, this is a moment, these RFPs, like you want to show off partnerships, conversations you've had with people to show that you've thought through this whole thing, including operations. I'll also, that kind of builds into my next comment, which is you guys probably of all the groups have the strongest vision, at least to start talking about this, like you're looking for a specific age demographic, this specific experience is supposed to be kind of, from what I heard, this kind of high retail, high product, high quality experience. But then I'm looking at some of the programming and there seems to be a disconnect. You're also in the same breath talking about affordable housing, senior housing. So I'm very concerned about the cost points, the price points for a lot of your kind of commercial stuff, and it actually matching up with the residential experience that you're providing too.
So basically they're two very different things. For the residential, we have affordable housing. So that's not really where we're making our money. We're really making our money downstairs with these big retail leases. It will bring a different crowd. The retail doesn't necessarily attract the people who live there. The people who live there, it's more just drawn by the affordable housing. And then it's a mix of different groups with the retail. Same thing as with the
Okay, so is it fair to offer housing, affordable housing, when they can't even afford to go use these commercials? Like, how do you address that?
Just building off of the same saying, I think so. We're prioritizing affordable housing for our residential tenants because that's something we feel like we want to bring to the community as opposed to take away. But at the same breath, we definitely feel like the BT hotel and pool will attract a lot of people. So I see that those are the polar opposite sides of that. But I think like our apartment complex with wine bar and music, like I don't necessarily think that's going to be something that's too expensive or too high risk for people to go spend money at. And similarly, our assisted living facility doesn't really have that type of vibe. So we feel like it kind of blends in well with the community itself. But at the same time, we see somewhat of a value in having maybe lower income residents surrounded by that type of stuff that they can then maybe go experience and enjoy.
Yeah, adding to that, with our anchor tenant being Voltage, they could afford that. And the thing, people normally wouldn't live around these things because the residential would be too expensive. It's not that I don't think they can't afford the retail. It's just that logically, normally it would be too expensive to live upstairs, but since it's affordable housing, that gives them the ability to live near these amenities that they would normally not be exposed to.
So we see some specific value.
Yeah, it's a unique opportunity for a lot of people.
Can you talk about what makes it affordable? You talk about the
Yeah, so it's the rent. The rent is like 17,000 a year for the one bedroom. It's 14,000 a year for the one bedroom.
What does that mean?
Well,
is it based on AMI? Is it why is that affordable?
It's affordable because if the median family income is 45,000 and the rent's 14,000, that's around 30% of. It's a percent of income. That's what makes something affordable housing.
I think maybe one question is, are they, income cap or could anybody who just wants to pay 14,000 a year?
Anyone who wants to pay 14,000 a year, I guess technically could rent it, but.
That being said, we're definitely looking to extend our invitations to this development and use this development to a priorities-based application for people who are already familiar with the community and live in the community, want to return, or already do live there. So we're going to prioritize those individuals for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be
them first, but at the same time, if they don't fill the units, we're going to have something.
It's going to be marketed towards people who would need affordable housing. But if someone else, is coming to buy it, I mean,
Being marketed for somebody, a partner in that, essentially a partner.
for marketing.
Non-income limited,
We would partner with there would be security downstairs, there would be a team into, we have marketing budget for the development, so it wouldn't be.
So we don't. We'll try to.
We don't have a full partnership
but that definitely is something we should.
We'll reach out to different community groups and community leaders to kind of spread the word around.
So no, we don't have a partnership entity for the affordable housing, but we do have a marketing budget, which now will focus on marketing to people who need it.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned, it seems like you did for the other stuff,
Right.
No, that was exclusively for this.
But I think, so just in my experience about affordable housing is that if it's not income limited, if somebody's not managing that, then it's not.
Then it doesn't work.
And the other thing that's holding you to it is just you and your partner's kind of, I guess, generosity to not, if somebody says 14,000, I'll pay 18,000.
Right, so we're definitely prioritizing the community in that. I would agree with that, but we need to try to stand strong in what our initiatives are in terms of trying to benefit the community itself. So I think definitely putting some sort of infrastructure in place with that can help us monitor those numbers. Maybe if we aren't able to rent out all our units to those that we're advertising it to initially, we could then set that income number, something like that. But first, we want to have it just available to those who are in the community because we don't want them.
It also, I think it helps a lot. I think it benefits those who need to live there and would need affordable income housing to be mixed in with other people who kind of just want to live there. I think that, crossing cultures and being exposed to different sort of lifestyles will help kind of not these people who need the affordable housing have to deal with a lot of like systematic disadvantages that those kind of people normally face.
There's also, there's also a whole series of fair housing issues where you actually can't restrict your housing for certain ways.
Yeah.
So unless you're actually tied to some other program, someone who really understands how to both operate and fix up and using it some part of the application. It's not just gonna happen, I guess. And then especially with the returns that you're presenting, those are great returns.
There are great
Everybody
returns.
could just do it and get good returns like that, this might actually have more.
Yeah,
more cheap housing.
Yeah, this is an aggressive and optimistic cash flow, definitely. If you want to look at it, I have the detailed cash flow on the computer, but yeah, it's it's just what we've done. We thought it'd be really easy to get the equity with the opportunity zone program and kind of just do a lot and really kind of just tackle this area. It's more of a vision. So it's like a whole vision that we had. I understand it doesn't normally happen in a lot of places like Florida. Right, this is new, it'll be like 5 years.
From an RFP standpoint, if I was reviewing this, I would have major concerns about your finances. Because it looks to me, looking at your usage table down there, you have a big problem in your model. So I'm wondering if you really are looking at the right analysis.
I don't have, there's no problem in the model. I accidentally sent him this and we put it on there. It was a mistake. We didn't think you guys would actually be able to read it from over there, but I have it on the computer. The model is perfect.
That was another $20 print if we were going to do this.
My point is that like detail matters.
No,
Okay? When the stakes are this high, it can be the smallest little thing. One of my favorite books in development, I encourage you guys all to read it, is Don People's Principles. It basically just talks about this kind of stuff, like RFP submissions for hotels where you're dealing with city government officials who are the gatekeepers to awarding these projects. And sometimes it's the smallest little detail.
I
that matters.
understand what you're saying. Financially, the model makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to move on from that. Like, what I'm trying to get to the point is that the biggest issue, this is a comment for everybody. The biggest issue with these RFPs is confidence that your guys' financial sources really are going to be there. Because if we're not confident in that, it's very unlikely that we're going to want to award the project.
The returns are so high because we're leasing really big retail spaces to these large tenants, and you wouldn't think in this area that would normally happen. But in areas where it does happen, it creates giant return.
Yeah.
So that's kind of.
And you mentioned optimism, one of the words you use, and I think what Cassius was getting on about, we've never seen this before. You mentioned affordable housing. I'm not seeing any financial products to actually subsidize that. I think it's almost impossible to create affordable housing without subsidy because the cost of construction. I mean, look at wood pricing right now. What's going on with wood pricing?
Yeah. Do you want
it's like triple right now.
Do you want to look at the model?
I would love to look at the model. I'm not going to right now. I'll ask you for it later. But I'm just saying that like there's some red flags here because of, like I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that you gotta be ready to defend it.
Yeah, no, I am.
Like,
I'm
what is
100%
your assumption on
100%
construction
ready to
pricing?
defend it.
How are you actually gonna make this affordable?
Yeah, we also have a little bit of leeway with that, since we're not, we want to do their affordable housing to be good for the community, but we do have a little leeway that we don't have any, like, contracts signed or anything to make it have to be exclusively affordable, so if the cash flow is not coming in to the point we wanted to, we could increase the rent prices to an extent that would make.
I remember the main uses off the main sources off the top of my head while they're here. So we got the loan for 18 million and then we put 7 million of equity. The uses were 25 million. And the projected value was gonna be like in the 30 million on the thing. So that's.
I do, but
Sitting in that affordable housing, and you can sell a project in 10 years. Who's gonna guarantee that affordable housing is gonna stay there? You said sustain it.
Right.
And sustainability means that affordability has to remain there. So how you gonna talk that guy and saying 10 years from now, okay, this is all you can get for rent. This is all you can get for rent. That's what his subsidies, he's talking about subsidies.
So
I mean, it's very, very important. That's one question. And my other question is at 25, 28, you have 10 apartments going upstairs,
yes,
and you got live music downstairs.
yes.
Who's gonna wanna live there?
The tenants that were gonna be in that,
Now, who's gonna be able to sleep?
Well, it's affordable, so the people are trying to get needs to rent the apartment.
The house.
The housing's affordable.
So they're supposed to suffer with the live music downstairs.
I think with some solid soundproofing, it wouldn't end up being.
I can't believe any of that, because we had music downstairs at 45, 28. And we had to restrict them that they couldn't even turn the music on until 6 o'clock, when everybody cleared out the top of the building where we had offices. So it's gonna have to be super duper.
Well, so
Yeah,
you had to clear it,
yeah.
okay, you have to clear it out because the people are there until 6 working. But since it's affordable housing, people don't get there till after work, so it would be live music during the day. So,
Let me hear about the.
okay. With an office, the people are there until 6, they clear it out 6, it's an office. But since they live there, they don't come there until after work. So they wouldn't come to their houses until after 6, so the live music.
What about a single mother with kids?
So the live music's gonna be playing while they're trying to sleep.
Yeah, this is actually a really good point, you guys.
They're
I think we
working.
could probably just audible it into being a normal restaurant bar. I don't think the live music is a deal breaker for this. You will honestly bring up a really good point
Well, it's
because,
a restaurant, it's gonna be live.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big deal,
Yeah.
especially if it's taking the 8,000 square. feet
yeah, we could think about transitioning that out of the live music part and just make the restaurant bar, because the live music wasn't the most supportive part of that. We just thought it'd be nice with that information that you brought to us. It definitely makes more sense to just do a normal restaurant with bar, and that's, we've got to try to transition.
I mean, it's something you gotta think about.
Yeah, similarly, like,
Depending on the live music guy you call, you know, rent it to you, because you got live music.
I think a lot of the
All of a
tenants that would
sudden,
be,
all the tenants are split out, and they're never coming back because of the live music.
the tenants that would be choosing to live in that location probably would know that in advance. So we're assuming there would be people, we probably have some sort of rental discrepancy, but I think it would be in comparison to our other affordable housing unit, I'm saying, but I think a lot of people who are living in that apartment building would definitely, if we were to continue with live music, would definitely know about that in advance and maybe would have an interest in that as opposed to an opposition to it, which I know is a little bit more specific of a tenant, but we're optimistic.
I think it's all, it's on. Count on it, it's gonna be hard, so. We had tenants in our building, when we had a lot, the first night he did it before, like he started one thing at 4 o'clock, everybody was bringing out phone up, what's going on with you? What's going on? Why did that? So, and it just came through the building. It's just, my experience with that.
It's definitely,
Thank you.
Yeah,
definitely. a great
I
point.
understand.
The restaurant's gotta be able to survive.
Right.
I mean, you can't keep that guys moving in and out.
Yeah, we can schedule a live music to only be playing during the weekday when people are at work and not, during weekend
At
mornings.
the same time, we acknowledge that not everyone does work 9 to 5, so we would definitely have to incorporate those people too. Yeah.
Having some sort of hours restriction.
But just to talk about another user here too, and something that I was struggling with was the assisted living facility, because there's like 12 different degrees of senior living all the way from independent, all the way up to full care. And obviously, as soon as you get past a certain point, you actually have to have licenses to be able to even open and have beds. And they're very strict in Orleans Parish and the state about allocating those permits.
We're planning on leasing this building too.
Yeah, we're not
to-
operating it
to
ourselves.
establish.
We're leasing it to.
So I don't want to beat it down again, but it's similar to the hotel, like
Have a partner.
showing those
Show
partnerships,
the
showing
partnership.
how you're actually going to do it is really important. Because that is a very specific, use that that degree is not defined of what type of living it is. Like it could trigger some huge policies and rules that you have to follow.
But in the same vein, as we specified earlier, we're trying to have some sort of volunteer relationship with the assisted living facility for both Tulane students and the community. So definitely getting that in mind, it would have to be some sort of more independent type as opposed to fully dependent type of assisted living facility. But there definitely would still have to be some sort of care required if there were to be volunteer work. So we're looking for something in that range. Are there any questions?
Just say something else about the presentation. I think this is maybe what I'm getting at too. That if this is a vision that includes all these pieces of parts, and then a lot of, if there's a question of like, oh well, if we can't do it, we'll just do something else. That really undermines confidence that these are the things that you are ready to do, or that are really important to the mission of bringing those returns, but also engaging the community. So I think there's a partnership or one way to bring to that, but also it's either a clear vision that needs up or it's stuff that can produce, plenty of foot. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, we definitely have this concise vision, but we also know, especially with COVID is happening, you never know what's gonna happen next year. We have to maintain some degree of flexibility that we have.
And I would say just relevant to the community, that is all presentations, where developers are genuine about wanting these things. I want the security to come here, I want the bus stop to come here, I want the assisted living facility, I want affordable housing, I can keep people in the neighborhood, but then something happens, it turns out that, oh, well, I gotta make my returns, so I couldn't do the trees, I didn't do the assisted living, I didn't do the affordable housing, people go, we lied, I didn't lie, I just got a business. And I think that that's not communicated, that it comes across that way, that people feel really skeptical when someone who's not done any work in the neighborhood comes in and says, I'm gonna transform these 4 blocks, and I want your trust. So I think it's really hard to do that.
Also, in terms of our flexibility and our vision for this project, our initial plan for the future development area was supposed to be golf course, but we were told that they were hit with COVID and then we had to restructure our entire development scheme basically. So having that flexibility throughout this process, I feel like has really helped us to keep an open door to certain changes, to certain specific details that we might not have actually clarified with the presentation. It's because they're things that we definitely are leaving the door open on and we're not trying to.
Well, I think that's natural developer internal dialogue, either yourself, if you're a developer by yourself, or within your team members. So I don't think it needs to be communicated today. I think you just have to have your vision and stick to it,
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
So there's, 6 minutes left of time. We want to talk real quick about yeah. I think we're gonna just leave it like this.
Oh, we're keeping it back up? Cool. So where's back in water?
I think there's a table over there.
Okay.
All right, come in with us. Yeah. I think we're gonna walk in the hallway.
Okay.
And clarify real quick.
I don't think I recall, but we were all-
I just decided that we are gonna pick a winner. I offhandedly said that a while ago.
That does sound familiar. I like it.
Okay. Group 3
I thought it was 3.
with the boardwalk. Yeah.
I mean, it was the boldest. It
Oh,
had
yeah,
issues.
bold.
Yeah.
And tear everything down and
Yeah.
eliminate parking.
Yeah.
Run out of town.
I mean, there was a lot of it that would have to be scaled back,
Mhm.
but I think the boldness of it is just kind of a new vision.
It's cohesive. Yeah.
I know the first 2 were okay. They were just kind of
Actually, the biggest issue in the first one was no housing. I don't know how on earth they're gonna deliver that project without housing.
Not 50 bucks.
I think it's between 2 and 3. For the two houses.
Yeah. Great. I would just go with the third one just because they were more bold. But all around through the semester, I think both of those two groups have really been the strongest and have showed the most effort and worked the hardest.
And I thought the second group was detailed and hit a lot of the things that we wanted to have happen. The third group was probably more bold.
Yeah, I think the second group also struggled too, because they were very big on like, oh, hundreds of jobs, a lot of jobs, you know, and it was third group actually delivered actual numbers behind it finally.
Well, when the third group gets run out of town, the second group can come.
Bold from John.
You agree?
I think the third group was the boldest. They had the most clarity about what they wanted to do, even though, like, you know, it could be taken as borderline offensive to try to force what you want to do on the community. But I think group 2, like, their target group demographic was unclear. And I think if it was more clear, that then they would have had more, like, you know, potential. So I would say group 3.
All right. So how about we announce the winner and then second place?
Well, I was gonna say, and just in terms of overall feedback, it seems like the first group really lacked some housing component.
Yeah.
The second group had, you know, doable, good, but not as bold. The third group maybe is not doable, but bolder. And then the fourth group, I don't know what maybe it seemed like they're trying to do everything.
They created this plan this weekend. That was not the plan.
That was obvious.
What did you say?
I said they created some of that stuff this weekend.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. Yeah. Okay, good.
You know what the group should have done?
Here's you go to
If we feel good about it,
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have a lot of time to talk.
Yeah. I'd say let's do it because we got 2 minutes technically.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
All right. Fastest committee meeting ever. All right. I can put you back here. Well, it might be for the YouTubers, whoever they are.
So thank you all for all the work that you put into all of this. And I know presenting is nerve-wracking at any time. And the group presentations are especially hard. But I think the actual act of presenting is a really important skill. And I think everybody felt good about all that. The work that was here, but also presented kind of visually important work. And a lot of times I think the juries in architecture school end up sounding a lot more critical, especially the more kind of stuff you give. People can pick apart aspects of it, and it can feel like, oh, geez, well, somebody else just painted a broad vision, and everybody could see what they wanted to see in that. And it sounds like a better jury. So I know that we were all critical of a lot of pieces, but I think that really was possible because of all the work that was presented in the detail. So I hope you take that as a positive thing. And in terms of the 4 kind of groups, I guess our 3.5 minutes of deliberation, I thought we were all pretty in the same place about the kind of first group was a good set of projects, but really felt was lacking in the housing solution, and there's clearly a housing challenge to this area anyway. We felt that the second group was a kind of a hit on all the bases, I guess, but was maybe a kind of not as bold a proposal as it could have been. We felt that the third group was a much bolder proposal, maybe more bold than people might be ready to handle. Everything was sort of new, but still addressed the kinds of issues that we felt were present in the project. And then the last group kind of had some of everything in there, and some of the pieces that were really important maybe weren't fully baked because of all the different parts that you were trying to do, but there's that ambition is good too. But so overall, we felt that the third group was the one that we were gonna hope that we can convince people to eliminate all of that parking and the kind of pedestrian through, so some really new ideas to introduce into this space. And I guess that was our results. We have to have results.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you all for your hard work and bearing with all of us as we figure this course out kind of as we went along. It's great working with all of you. I look forward to all of your individual packets over the next week. If you do decide to turn in early, please email me and CC my work email so I look at it faster. And always,
we have the ability, we have the copies, so we can post these somewhere.
Yep.
So the dean came by, I don't know if you saw that, but he's very interested in how this plays out. So we're able to, I know they do an exhibit for graduation. So we're gonna post these there if that's appropriate.
all right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Here? Yeah, leave your boards here because they're gonna be posted for graduation.
Please thank your guests on the way out too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you, Brown, Louie, Rashida. I'll give you a hug. Thank you.
So much for giving me the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.